one of our great colleagues at the Office of Innovation and Commercialization, Ruben, is here tonight. He's going to tell you a little bit about kind of what he does with OIC. He's our Director of Commercialization. So he and his colleagues are going to be tremendous resources for you, should you need them. And I'll let him explain in more detail kind of what they do and kind of how they can be of service.
Thank you, Greg. How's everybody doing tonight? How many of you were here at the last session? Great. Thank you. Welcome to this session. My name is Ruben Flores, and I'm going to put on my glasses because Doug asked me to keep my glasses on. Is that better, Doug?
Looks good.
Doug is our Associate Vice Chancellor for the School of Medicine and Public Health, and we're very lucky and very happy to have him here. How many of you are undergrads? Welcome. We're very happy that you're here. How about grad students? Very good. And the rest, professors, staff, visitors, all of the above? Great, thank you. Huh? Postdocs? Yeah, that's true. I forget. I was there once. I did my PhD at UCLA. I'm a Bruin. I study developmental biology. Very basic concepts on developmental biology, evolutionary developmental biology, the formation of the dorsal ventral axis in the food line. And now I find myself leading the #1 team in the UC system that deals with startups, with patents, with licenses, with innovation and commercialization. And I work under Paul Robin, who, along with Greg, where's Greg right there, puts together this incredible series. Our office, you might have heard about it. In other places, it's called technology transfer. We don't like that name. It's an old, antiquated name. It's a passive name. What we like to do here is we like to tell the world what we do, which is commercialize your inventions or help you commercialize your ideas, whether we own them or not. So one of the first things that I tell everybody, not undergrads because you guys are free, but grad students, professors, postdocs, is I don't care about owning your IP. I really don't give, because I have a lot of things on my plate. Now, your investors, your business partners may care that you have proper right and assignment and title to that IP. Most cases that we see of disputes coming to our office regarding IP ownership are never initiated with us. Actually, but most all cases are never initiated by us. They're initiated by a third party, someone who's jealous of your success and is going to come to you and say, you know what, you were not an inventor, or the university should have owned that, or you should name so-and-so, you should have done this. We're here to help. We're here to make sure that you understand some of the basic concepts in intellectual property law, and what are some of the things that you need to be aware of, and should you choose to follow that path, ensure your success. Our team here at UC San Diego signs, executed about 150 licenses every year, commercial licenses. And we spin off about 20 to 23 companies every year. Now that's just coming from our office. From the rest of the campus, from you guys, there's a total of about 50 to 60 companies. So a lot of undergrad activity. You guys are great, you're doing great stuff, and we're here to support you. And we're here to make sure that everybody succeeds and everybody can, get their ideas out to the marketplace or experiment and fail in this environment, in this safe environment. I'm gonna stop that there now. And Greg, do you want to introduce our speaker? Do you want me to introduce our speaker? Very good. Just let me finish by saying that our office has 32 people, 10 licensing officers, 8 operations, 2 marketing, program managers. So we're here to help you whatever you need to connect, learn about intellectual property deals, connecting with investors and so on and so forth. So Eleanor Music is one of our most enthusiastic supporters and one of our most trusted partners in intellectual property. Our office works with 20 to 25 different law firms across the world because we have 4,000 cases that we manage. And Eleanor has done just an amazing, incredible work on favorably prosecuting and getting us claims allowed on those patents that her team works on. She's a great supporter. She sponsors our annual innovation event, Ignite. She's the main sponsor of the event. And throughout the year, she partners with us to provide seminars like this. If you ever have any question on anything, feel free to contact her directly now, later in the future, because I know that she's going to give you the best advice on how to proceed and how to succeed. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ruben. Can you hear me? Okay, so you got a little bit of Ruben's background. I want to give you some of mine. I am a UCSD alum. I graduated 40 years ago this year from Revelle with my bachelor's degree in physics. So it has been very exciting for me to stay in touch. It's incredible how much the campus has changed in all that time. When we were going here, it was called Central Library, not Geisel Library. It was as far as you could get from Central. It was a major hike. There was nothing out there but eucalyptus trees. So the campus has changed a lot, and I am very happy to have remained involved doing patent work with the university for over 25 years. So thank you, Ruben, and so I'm really happy to talk with you about intellectual property. And some of you, I'm sure you've heard the term. Most of you probably think of patents, but it's not just patents, it's a number of things. So what I want to talk to you today is just give you a background on everything. It's a huge, huge subject, and I can't give you a comprehensive description of everything, so I'm just going to touch on things, and then when we get to the end, if you have questions, or I'll have my cards available if you have questions later. My firm, I'm a founder and partner. We work specifically with institutions like the university and with startups. So that's our primary mission, and so we'd like to answer your questions as clients or just because. So let's get started. Intellectual property is really, it's almost everything in business. I mean, it's not everything, but it's the assets. It's what you are selling, offering, buying. Every company in every industry has IP. It includes patents, which covers your technology. It's trademarks, which covers your brand. Copyright is creative expression. If your idea for your company is software, app development, some kind of creative or artistic endeavor, that's covered by copyright. And trade secret is something that you consider to be valuable to your company that is not necessarily that's not registered. It's something you keep secret. It's like customer lists and formulas that you don't want to get out in the general public. So these are the four primary types of intellectual property. So just diving right in, let's go into trademarks, which to me are some of the easiest forms of intellectual property. A trademark is a way of identifying a source of goods. A service mark is the same thing for services. So I've provided some examples here, and there are different types of trademarks. You'll see Coca-Cola obviously is a common mark. There's the word, there's the design, there's the symbols, there's the shapes, and you can even get trademarks in color. And so I have right here, the example is a Tiffany box. They have a trademark on their color. Service marks, these are common marks that you've seen, Uber, Facebook. So it can be the logo, it can be the name, any combination thereof. It doesn't have to be specifically the name of the company. It could be something that you associate with that company, like the like symbol. That's not their trademark, but you associate that with Facebook. So it's something that allows you to recognize the source of whatever the good or the services that is being provided by the owner of that mark. You don't have to register trademarks. You can use them in what's called the common law. But there are certain advantages to registering the mark. It enhances your ability to protect it. It gives you federal jurisdiction if you have to sue for infringement. You can only use the circle R if the mark is registered, federally registered. While they're owned by the trademark, while they are actually owned by the IP owners, the real rationale behind trademarks is to protect consumers, to allow consumers to recognize the source of goods. So if somebody makes a counterfeit product and uses a name like you see counterfeit athletic shoes or counterfeit purses. The consumer is seeing, wow, that's a Gucci bag, but it's not got the Gucci quality. And so you're expecting to see a certain level of quality in a product that bears a trademark. So that's why trademark owners protect their trademarks, because they don't want anyone downgrading the goodwill that they've established by providing a certain level of quality. So it's something that you'll see trademark litigation. It's an important aspect when you are a startup company to really develop your brand. Trademarking is part of it, registering it is part of it, and that's how you really leap into the market. You don't want to leap into the market and then find out, oops, I'm infringing somebody else's mark, and now I've got to change it, and I've established this goodwill, and people know me, and now I got to change it. So it's an important aspect of IP that can help or harm your new company if you don't do it right. This is a list of the 10 most valuable trademarks that was published by Forbes. And down below each trademark, you'll see what they have valued their trademark at. So it's not insignificant. 44.3 billion is the value of the Google trademark. So down to still down to 30 billion for AT&T. There are several types of trademarks. Fanciful is one that's completely made up word, just Kodak, Verizon. They don't mean anything apart from their use as a brand name. Arbitrary means that the mark has no relation to the goods or services, like Apple for computers. Apple for apples is generic, but Apple for computers, you don't think about computers except for the fame that Apple has gained on its own use of that mark. A suggestive mark suggests a characteristic of the product, like Microsoft having to do with software and computers, IBM, GE, Facebook. Seems kind of weird. Facebook seems like a made-up name, but it's actually suggestive because it's dealing with social media. Descriptive mark describes a product or service, like Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Walmart. And generic is something that just describes, everybody uses the same word. Aspirin used to be a registered trademark. Dry ice, flip phones, those were all registered trademarks, but they became generic in their usage so that it was no longer used to specifically and uniquely identify that source of those goods. So when you are getting ready to start your company, you want to make sure, that the temptation is, I want to have a trademark that's going to suggest to people or tell people what my product is. Well, the problem is that doesn't really distinguish you, and you're going to have to put a lot into marketing to really build that brand. So if you look at that list of the biggest trademarks, most of them are pretty unusual. I mean, they're not super descriptive. And so that's how you develop the unique recognition within the market. And you want it to be catchy with your target market, but you also want it to be a strong mark that somebody else isn't going to be able to come along and say, well, I'm Bank of Omaha. Bank of America is similar to Bank of Omaha, so you have to spend a lot of capital in developing the brand rather than developing a unique name that is just going to catch people's eye. The trademarks and service marks are a valuable asset. We in the last slide, we showed some of the valuations of those trademarks. These are just a few relatively recent verdicts, damages awards for trademark infringement. The Tiffany versus Costco was just last year, where Costco was selling some diamond rings with what they called Tiffany settings. And they were found to infringe the Tiffany mark and ordered to pay $21 million for infringement. The reason for that is because the trademark has certain value. People expect a certain quality. So if it wasn't up to the quality of what Tiffany thinks it sells, then to them it damages their trademark, and therefore they were entitled to damages. The second case there, Trevan versus Pfizer, 143 million for trademark infringement. This was an unusual situation. Trevan sells RFID tags, like for laboratory animals and pets, and I think they're expanding their market. It's a UK company. Pfizer came out with a drug called Trevan that turned out to have horrible side effects and was pulled from the market, but it created a lot of damage to the Trevan mark because there was an association of bad things with that mark, and so they were ordered to pay $143 million to the company. Similar for U-Haul versus Pods. U-Haul was recognizing that it wasn't getting the traction that it wanted for its portable storage solutions, which they were calling something else, so they called it U-Haul Pods, and Pods was the registered trademark of Pods. And so they were awarded $65 million for trademark infringement. So trademarks and service marks, they seem like a relatively small part of your business, but they really can be big business.
Can I ask just a question? Which trademarks are you familiar or are you aware that we have around us here? Which ones can you think about that you see every day at UCSD? The Triton logo, the UCSD logo, the Alumni Association logo, the School of Medicine logo, all of those are trademarks, and people have to get permission to use them in business settings, right? So trademarks are all around you all day, basically, here on campus.
Yeah, the library logo, which is one that's commonly used. You know, it's not got any words with it. It's just the picture of, the stylized picture of the library. And people recognize it. I mean, it's developed goodwill, it's developed name recognition, and so it's worth protecting.
Question?
Yes?
Yeah, maybe this is a silly question, but how much does it cost in general to trademark something, and like what's the timeline? Like if you start some biotech company in San Diego and you come up with some, like you think it's some clever name, is that like you fill out a form, or is it years of working with lawyers?
It's a relatively, that's why I started with it. For a patent attorney as myself, trademarks are like candy. They're really easy. The process is about a year, could be a little more if you run into some obstacles like the trademark examiner doesn't like the way you describe the goods, or if they say, this is a little too descriptive of the goods, and then you have to make arguments. It's all a negotiation to get the registration. But it's the costs generally, the fees for filing range from about $225 to $275, depending on the procedure that you use. And then the attorney's fees depends on if it's a reasonable firm or a big firm. You can be looking at probably anywhere from maybe $800 to $1,000 to file a trademark application. And it's only one mark, and that's for one class. So trademarks fall into different classes. So if you're selling like reagents and then devices, medical devices, that's two different classes. So the fee, that $225 to $275, is per class. So there are a lot of variables involved in it, but in the scheme of IP, it's pretty cheap. Yes?
So if I'm building a website for a startup, in the team section, I'm putting members of the team and what they attended, or with the founders, or whatever. If I'm using the UCSD logo, whatever logo, I have to ask for permission.
That's correct.
Who should I ask?
And generally, it's in a situation like that, if it's a matter of association. Ruben wants to see UCSD lauded out in public. So if you're doing something really good and this is good press for UCSD, then he's going to say, yeah. But if you're out there making porno movies and you say, well, this guy went to UCSD and learned how to make his movies, then maybe that's not something that So it's depends on the usage, and it can be mutually beneficial.
Yeah, that's correct. That's a very important point. It's usually there's not going to be any financial consideration, especially if it comes from an alum, a postdoc, someone who's trying to, use it for a positive aspect.
The Ignite logo too is another one that is.
Yeah, the Ignite logo is I believe owned by UCSD, and so
Right.
yeah, we want to get their permission as well. Okay, so any more questions on trademarks? You can catch me afterwards if not, if something comes to mind later. Another kind of important aspect or form of intellectual property is copyright. Copyright protects original works of authorship, including literary, dramatic, musical, and artistic works, including poetry, novels, movies, songs. It also protects computer software and architecture, and one that I don't have on this list is kind of weird. It's like layouts for integrated circuits. It's a special map. I can't even remember the name of it now, but that's one fairly uncommon form of copyright protection. Generally, in a category, all of these things, these works of authorship are known as works. Copyright doesn't protect facts, ideas, concepts, but it may protect the way that things are expressed. So copyright, it has to be fixed in a tangible medium. That can be, of course, say fixed in a tangible medium. It could be a performance as well. But the only way you could infringe a performance is to tape it or take a video of it or something like that. So it's once the concept is placed on paper or in a painting or in a film, then it's copyrightable. Copyrights vest in the author at the time of creation. You don't have to register it. So you write some pretty poem or you draw a picture of a flower, you've got copyright in that right then. You don't have to register it. You can, but the registration is essential if you ever need to sue somebody for it. So it's something you can do after the fact, after somebody infringes your copyright, but it's preferable to register it beforehand because there are certain legal remedies that are not available if you wait until after infringement occurs. In order for there to be an infringement of a copyright, the accused infringer has to have access to the original work. So if you wrote something or painted a picture and then you go somewhere and you see somebody else that painted a picture that's really a lot like yours, unless they saw yours and copied it, they did not infringe your copyright. So it can be independently created as long as it's independently created without having had access to your original work, then it wouldn't be infringed. So copyright is not a super strong form of protection, but for works that somebody has invested a lot of money into, films, recordings, books. If somebody copies some or all of that work, then copyright infringement protection is what you would want to seek. So what I have here at the bottom of the screen is an illustration. It's not infringement to take your own photograph of Half Dome, even with the moon behind it. But if you had seen Ansel Adams' picture and you were trying to recreate that picture, even if you didn't have to take a picture of his picture, if you took a picture exactly like his picture, then you would probably be infringing the copyright.
Can you explain the financial sort of considerations that would come with that infringement? I mean, so just because you take the picture like Ansel Adams, you're not infringing. It's what you do or what you intend to do with that picture.
Right. If you just take it and keep it for yourself, it's not going to. There's no damage. If you were taking out and publishing it and putting it out on the market and saying, either this is an Ansel Adams picture or this is my own picture, isn't it great, pay me $5,000 each, then you are taking proceeds, you're making profit on an infringement, and that would be actionable. In every form of intellectual property infringement, there's always a business decision, whether there are damages, whether the person who owns the intellectual property is being damaged by the unauthorized use of their intellectual property. So with the case of copyright, if you stuck it in your drawer and you never looked at it again, or 5 years later say, wow, look at this cool picture, Ansel Adams' estate wasn't injured as a result of that. So it wouldn't be very smart for them to sue, and it wouldn't be injurious to them that you took that picture. So it's all part of the business aspect of valuing and protecting your intellectual property.
And the same would be the case for the website question that we had earlier, right? So, you know, it would only matter if by using or placing that logo into the website, the university was being damaged in some way or form, losing business credibility, and then the university would have to determine, well, how much is that worth to us? If it's innocuous, if it's just on the website and we just give you permission and right to use it, and it's all good, right? So again, it's all proportional to the use of those assets. Remember, intellectual property is a business asset. That's what you want to, that's how you want to think about it.
So here are just some tidbits about copyright. The term of a copyright generally lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years. For anonymous works or works made for hire, the copyright lasts the shorter of 95 years from first publication or 120 years from creation. So a lot of copyrights in some very old works, old movies and stuff, are still in effect. Copyright cannot be renewed unless the work was published or registered prior to 1978, which was when there was a major change in the copyright laws. So 1978, that's the year I graduated from UCSD, a long time ago. If an employee creates a work within the scope of his or her employment, the copyright is owned by the employer. It's considered a work for hire. But if an independent contractor creates a work under commission or contract, the copyright is owned by the creator. And this is important for you to keep in mind if you're starting a business, say you're developing an app or website or doing something, that you're hiring somebody else to do graphics for you, to do programming, development of some kind. That person owns the copyright, and I've seen it happen frequently that somebody will have a web developer design their website and then they say they hold them hostage because then you can't modify the website, you can't add things, you can't change it at all without them being involved. So it's like permanent employment. So when you do work out a deal, when you're starting up your company and you have to hire somebody to do work for you along these lines in which they are creating some work of authorship, you need to have a written agreement transferring all of the copyrights to you. The copyright owner has exclusive rights to use, copy, perform, distribute, and create derivatives of a copyrighted work. And in some cases, they have moral rights, such as attribution or artistic integrity. So if somebody creates, makes some great sculpture or painting, and somebody changes that work of art, the author, the artist, can sue for violation of their artistic integrity. So that's another aspect that you have to deal with if you don't get permission, if you don't get ownership of the work that you had your contractor create for you. Is they're going to say, well, hey, I have right of artistic integrity in my website or in the graphics that I created for you. So it's very important that you get the rights transferred. Yes?
Isn't there some protection for satire? Or there must be some.
Yes, that's next. Okay, so this cute picture here, some of you may have heard in the news on Monday the Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit decided that an animal cannot own a copyright. So Selfie Monkey was denied the right to sue for infringement of his selfie. So talking about your question, going to your question, there is something called a fair use exception to copyright. Most often you see it in academic settings where if there is education, research, some kind of generally nonprofit endeavor that needs to utilize information from a copyrighted work, it's generally considered to be a fair use. It's not a fair use if it's going to deprive the copyright owner of the intended proceeds. So like, it's not fair use for a university bookstore to photocopy a whole bunch of textbooks and sell them so that you don't have to pay the outrageous fees for the textbook, because that author wrote that book to be sold to generate the royalties. So in that case, it's not fair use. If you make one copy for laboratory use, if you make it just for you're writing your thesis and you need to make some copies of an academic publication, that's generally considered fair use. It's also fair use to copy portions of a copyrighted work for criticism or parody and for news. So here I've got a couple parody examples up there, Bad Lip Reading and Robot Chicken. And they take the original work, portions of the original work, and do funny things with it. So it's not intended to replace the work or the purpose of the work. It's not depriving the work of money that it might have made from the sale of that movie, or somebody bought the DVD or bought it on demand or whatever. It's a completely different work. It's a commentary, and that is fair use. So the factors for fair use is the purpose and character of the use, nonprofit like the university, the type of copyrighted work, and the amount of work used in relation to the entire work. And as I mentioned, the effect of use on the value of the work. If the value of the work was, the point of the work was to sell movies or sell books, if you're depriving the owner of the copyright of proceeds from those sales, then it's not going to be considered a fair use. There are a few other limitations on...
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So I have a question for you, actually. It's a
yes.
real world situation. If I wanted to use the following phrase to promote the fact that here at UC San Diego, we're very good at innovation and commercialization, would this be a fair use? Why is this on? So it goes like this, right? I don't always innovate, but when I do it at UC San Diego. Say invented, my friends. You all get that? Who got that? Who didn't get that? Okay. Right.
Trademark.
Like trademark?
No, that's really trademark rather than copyright. Because what do you associate that with immediately? It's a tagline for Dos Equis. It depends. I mean, it depends. Again, it's a question of whether they would want to take action. Is that depriving them? Is that creating an association with Dos Equis? Is it degrading the value of their mark? It's not. So it's not going to be a question of fair use in that case, because that really is a trademark. You are associating it with a particular product. And again, I just, it depends on what they do. Did you have a question, or? Okay. Yes?
What about the use of songs at political rallies, for example?
The political rallies have to obtain a license. And so on occasion, you'll hear about the artist complaining that a political campaign used their song. Sometimes, in a lot of cases, artists will handle licensing through like a clearinghouse, BMI or ASCAP, and so they don't individually approve licenses. So I've heard of situations where, you know, maybe a campaign that you're not particularly in favor of acquired a license to use your song, and maybe that artist wasn't happy with that candidate and didn't want them associating their music with that particular candidate. And so it's a very difficult situation that they may not have the right to refuse because they've granted rights to that clearinghouse to control the licensing of their music. But it's, you know, it's not going to, then you get into the issue of publicity, negative publicity, and nobody wants to have negative publicity associated with them, and so, you know, maybe they'll work out a deal if it's scandalous or opposed to their beliefs or political views, then, you know, they may have the right to object to the use. Okay, so there are certain limits to copyrights. First sale exception is, for example, if you buy some software, you don't own the copyright in the software, but you own that copy of the software. So if you sell your software to somebody else, and I'm not talking about a copy, but if you sell a licensed copy to somebody else, like I'm not using my Photoshop anymore, so I'm going to sell, you know, give the disk or sell the key to somebody else, then that's a limitation. The copyright owner can't say, hey, you can't sell this to this person because they purchased a physical copy or, you know, a single unit of that work rather than selling it for reproduction and distribution. Savoir-faire is when you're talking about when there are elements of a work that are common in a particular genre and they can't be protected. So like in a computer program, you're always going to have a list of variables. That's unavoidable. So, you know, from one program to another, it's not going to be infringement if you have the same list or a very similar list of variables. An easier to understand example is when you have a spy novel. Every spy novel has, you know, every spy story has certain elements that carry over, and those are not protectable from the generic concept of, you know, having your Swiss bank account, your exploding watch, and so I have a picture here of spy chewing gum cameras and spy pens and stuff like that. So these are common elements that you see in just about every or a large number of spy books. So that in itself is not copyrightable from one book to another. There's also kind of this obscure thing where once a copyright owner has published music, then somebody else is entitled to seek a license from them to also publish that music. So it's called the language of the law is kind of archaic. It's talking about phonorecords, but it's really referring to any tangible medium that it's been fixed in. So somebody can then seek a compulsory license also to reproduce copies of those. They can't do it for free, but so it's not an absolute, like I don't like this guy, so I'm not going to give him a license. He has to give a license under reasonable terms. Okay, so that's copyrights. Trade secrets, those are generally any form of information that can be used in business that is of sufficient value and retains its or maintains its value through its secrecy is considered a trade secret. They can have economic value, they can be secret, just something that gives you an advantage. Customer lists are a very common form of trade secret. Some of the more common trade secrets that just have retained their value for a very long period of time are the formula for Coca-Cola. the formula for WD-40. Formulas that once, if they were to have gotten a patent on that, it would have been all written down, and so somebody could have used the formulas, but they have been sufficiently protected and kept secret so that nobody knows what those formulas are. My first law firm represented WD-40. Nobody in the law firm. We did patents, we did a huge number of trademarks for them, but nobody knew the formula for WD-40. It was very carefully protected. It's still protected, and that's a real trade secret. It's something that they have a huge advantage over everybody else, and as long as they protect it, it's got great value.
So I have a question. So it was never disclosed, it was their trade secret. If I was just working in a lab and I had stumbled upon, just through my own formulation, of something that worked for me, and then I went ahead and patented it, how does that affect kind of what they're doing?
Well, first there'd be the question of whether you'd get the patent if there was prior art. But if they never disclosed it, then there's no prior art.
Right.
The issue then is if you just stumbled on the exact same formula,
Or something close.
or something close, you would get the patent on it. Your patent would last for 20 years, and then it would be out in the public domain, and anybody could use it. So maybe that would devalue the WD-40, but who knows, because nobody knows what the trade secret is.
I get that, and they may not know what prior art means.
Okay, yeah, I'll get to that when I get to patents. Yes?
But say you're not affiliated with WD-40 as a company, but you take WD-40 is available in the market, you can take it, and if you have sufficient knowledge of the science, you can tease out the materials in it and the proportions.
Well, yeah, yes and no. Reverse engineering is what you're talking about. And yeah, you can do that. The thing is that WD-40 has been around for decades. Coca-Cola has been around for decades, and nobody has been able to reverse engineer it. Not quite. So until it's actually out there, yeah, you can reverse engineer.
But if you did and they don't have a patent, then technically you figured it out.
Yes, exactly. And that's the risk of trade secrets. Yes?
There is a news recently, going around about the fact that MIT scientists created a new enzyme or something like that that can help to process plastic. But as far as I know, like Japanese, for example, have been utilizing these enzymes for many, many years. They do it, they even introduced it in their urban planning and so on. So I'm just wondering at which level those trade secrets can be utilized, leveraged as a product or as a molecule without any kind of IP attached to it.
Well, once a trade secret is out, it's out. So there's, if you're relying on trade secret and you know that what your, the trade secret property can't be reverse engineered, then you're pretty safe. But there's nothing to prevent somebody else from coming up with it independently. And if they do, then for them to be able to say, yeah, this is exactly like WD-40, or this is exactly like plastic-eating enzyme that they're using, that they've been using for years in Japan, they've got to be able to, if they're going to claim that it's the same, they need to be able to prove it, and they can't prove it if they can't see the trade secret. So there's still some advantage to the trade secret, but if it's got all the properties and results that your trade secret process provides, then that's the risk they took.
So just to clarify, so as far as I understand that both countries, for example, in this case, they can use it like they can use this enzyme as their own unique invention. Is that?
Well, you can create an invention. It's just whether you want to protect it and keep it exclusive to yourself. And so that's where intellectual property comes in, is you can come up with the greatest thing in the world. If you don't care if anybody else uses it, then they can go ahead. If you want to keep it as an asset of your company and generate revenue from your exclusive right to exploit that technology, then you've got to protect it with some form of IP, either patent or trade secret. Yes?
Sorry, I'm going back to the Coca-Cola question.
Yes?
If something is protected and nobody, I mean, it's secret and nobody knows what's in it, but if it's an item that's going into for human consumption of some sort, wouldn't they have to get permission from like an FDA or something that they're not adding something dangerous in it or exceeding the level of, say, sugar that they're putting in it that could potentially harm human life? I mean, they have to disclose something to the government to be able to sell it, right?
They're not going to have to disclose the formula. All they're going to have to disclose is whether it's tested safe. Yes?
Yeah, I did have a question. You guys are referring to actual products, but going back to, like, for example, things that are kept secret. So if you're in a business and you've got a list of clients and you're working in business development, for example, you happen to go to an outside networking event and you manage to get these business cards from individuals, which you then keep, and then you use them in the workplace, but then you also use them in a later form of business. So Rolodex is that if you have something, so if you have it at work, physically at work, does that belong to that company, or does that belong to you? And you can go ahead and use it for
That's a really good question. Does everybody know what a Rolodex is? It really depends. Was that in the course of your employment?
Yes.
Were you sent out there to network?
Oh, well, yeah, so there are multiple
Yeah.
different things. So some, of course, were in the course of employment at a company networking event, and some were, I just happened to be somewhere and met someone who happened to be in the same industry, and they physically gave me their business card, which was not in a database for the company.
Well, think of it in terms of economic value to the company. If generally, when I think of a customer list, it's going to be people that I'm selling my product to, that I have groomed over years and developed a relationship with. And in the effort and resources I put into developing that relationship, I consider that a value, having value. So when you're going to see litigation or some kind of claim of theft of trade secret in the form of a customer list, it's going to be when the company has invested time and effort into developing a listing of clients whose needs they know, whose needs, preferences, businesses they understand. If you're going out and collecting contacts at a networking event, that's not quite the same as grooming a relationship with customers who purchase regularly from you. So I would not consider that to be the same thing. Okay, so factors for trade secrets: information must be kept secret and not generally known. So that's going to be your customer list. That's going to be your secret formulas. It must have value to others who don't possess it. So somebody's trying to make a copy of that formula, but they can't quite get it. And then it's subject to reasonable efforts to maintain its secrecy. It's kept in a safe. You have to sign things in and out. You have to, if you can't disclose it to other people, and you notify your employees, this is company confidential. We don't want anybody finding this out. So you take active efforts to notify people that this is important to the business and you don't want anybody revealing it.
I think something that is important that we mentioned is, though, although Elaine is an attorney, this presentation is not legal advice to any of you. And we don't want You guys have to be aware that if you are seeking legal advice, you have to hire an attorney. You can hire an attorney for 50 cents, for a cent, for a penny. You have to hire an attorney, right? So until Elaine becomes your attorney, right now, everything that we're talking about is all for educational purposes.
Yes, and you don't have to pay an attorney to hire them. There just has to be an understanding of representation. So that's what's important, is there has to be an understanding on the part of both the attorney and the client that the client is being represented.
I've been watching Breaking Bad too much.
Yeah, that dollar, the $10 in the pocket, what's that? Call Sal, or what's Saul? Call Sal. Okay. Yeah, I haven't watched that. Okay, back to trade secrets. So as I mentioned, they have to be created by affirmative actions. You have to have a policy in writing. If you have an employees, you want to make sure that there are confidentiality provisions in the agreements. You may, if you've ever been in a job where you had a termination interview and you had to sign a termination agreement, it says you're not going to disclose proprietary company confidential information to your new employer. Non-disclosure agreements, if you are talking with somebody about your idea, maybe you're looking for funding or you're looking to have somebody assist you in developing it, the technology, potential licensees, you have them sign a non-disclosure agreement and you're going to tell them, this information is confidential to my company, this is what gives me value, don't disclose it. You want to restrict access to files, only employees that need to know. You need to label the documents as confidential or proprietary, and you want to make sure, this is something that they do at OIC, and sometimes contact me in emergency saying this professor is just about to give a talk on this invention and we don't have a patent application filed on it. But sometimes you don't want things published until you've got the protection in place. So as an employer, you want to make sure that nobody's going to go out and blurt your secrets to everybody. So we were talking, kind of bouncing around this a little bit. The advantages of trade secrets, the protection is immediate. Once you create it, you just say, don't tell anybody about this. This is the greatest idea in the world. Anything can be protected by trade secret. It's cheap, but disadvantages are you have to be constantly diligent. You can't let anybody accidentally find out the information. You got to keep that safe locked. You got to make sure that all your departing employees are aware that you're going to sue them if they go out and tell their new employer that you discovered the greatest. I think there was a big dispute on the autonomous cars. Going back and forth between, I think, Uber and Google, was it? That there were employees moving to and from the different companies and were carrying around information. So there, as I mentioned before, there's no protection against reverse engineering. If you're hoping to protect your technology by trade secret, but it can be reverse engineered, then that's not a good way to go. I used to work for a big computer company that did tons of reverse engineering. They would deconstruct integrated circuits to try and figure out what the process was that was used to make those circuits. Major companies invest huge amounts in reverse engineering of their competitors' products. So don't rely on trade secret if it's something that can be taken apart.
So kind of going to the reverse engineering, if you have some sort of product or idea that you don't want to get patent or maybe you can't get patent, are there legal steps you can take to if you want to show investors hey, look at this cool thing I'm working on, but you also don't want them to just tell people they know at Google about it and then just have Google could put 200 people on it and just beat you to it. Is there
yeah, that's a non-disclosure agreement, or called NDA or CDA. It's based in contract. You are just entering into a contract saying, I'm disclosing this to you, I believe it has value, I expect you to keep it confidential. You're getting the benefit of hearing this idea. You may have the opportunity for a great investment or, potential partnership, but it lies in contract. So then if they were to breach that contract and disclose it, go to some other company and say, hey, I've got this really cool idea, then you have that contract. In conjunction with that contract, you have to be very clear on what the confidential information is. So you can't just say, I have this great idea for an autonomous vehicle, and it's got a robot driver. And if you're telling a 30,000 foot plan and expecting, but then you get down into the details and all you've said, I told you about this great autonomous vehicle, but really what was key to it was the use of the flux capacitor. That's, to go back to the future, you have to specifically identify what the confidential information is. So it's a combination of the non-disclosure agreement and a clear identification of the confidential information that's being disclosed.
And before you disclose any information to any third party, the first question that you want to ask yourself is, why? Why is the purpose of me having this conversation with Google? Be very, very clear. What do you expect? Are you expecting funding? Are you expecting some piece of hardware, software for them to help you? And what are you going to give them in return? So that has to be very, very clear. It's usually a waste of people's time if you are not clear as to why you're approaching a third party with an idea or a business proposition. So you have to be very, very clear before you raise your hand and say, I got something for you, right? So yeah, and if you're not clear, seek help, and we can help you. To kind of formulate what is that business proposition that you want to put forward. In software, it may be difficult to do it without a CDA to do a demo, but in medical innovations, you can show some relevant data, but not all of the data that gives away the secret sauce, like the formulation that you use, the concentration, the timing, the conditions of cell culture, the animal injections. You'll need all of those things that you can show, before and after controls to show data without a confidentiality agreement in place. But in other cases, it's not possible. Again, before you start sharing any data with anybody, why? You have to be very clear. You have to be convinced that you need to have that conversation.
Did you have a question in the back?
Is there any particular value in going through the patenting process if the invention can in fact be relatively easily reverse engineered?
Absolutely. Yeah, if it can be relatively easily reverse engineered, absolutely you need to go through the patent process. Yes?
So if someone working at Coca-Cola divulged the formula and Coca-Cola said, we're going to sue you, it seems like the damages that Coca-Cola would suffer from someone recreating it would be millions or billions of dollars, and suing one individual person isn't going to make up for nearly that much. Is there any other protection a company like that would have? They just kind of
No. What they might do is, a lot of times, if that employee or whoever it was who got access to the formula went to Pepsi, they'd go after both the employee and Pepsi. And also, you pretty much are going to assume that unless they had a beef with Coke, they didn't do it for free. So they made some money out of it too. So, somewhere, it may be that they won't get much out of it, but that would be who they could go after.
In tech, so in investing, when we invest in tech companies, one of the biggest areas of trade secret we see is in computer code. And then it just becomes a decision for a lot of people, because once you disclose and people get to see your computer code, you kind of reveal to people kind of what you're doing and how you're doing it. A strategy where some people prefer to keep that quiet.
And then that raises another issue, is that a lot of times in litigation, when somebody has a trade secret, it'll almost be like a strategy within litigation to try and find out what that trade secret is. You say, well, you stole my trade secret, and then you have to prove to me that you didn't. And so show me what you're doing. And so it's kind of a backdoor way of trying to find out what technology other people are using. Yes?
How strong is the copyright protection? You mentioned that for layout you can have a copyright. So comparing with the patenting, how strong is the copyright?
Like I said, with copyright, two people can come up with the same thing independently. And so there's no protection if somebody else came up with it independently. With patents, if somebody gets a patent on an invention, it doesn't matter if somebody came up with it independently. You can stop them. So patents are much stronger.
So then the copyright on the layout, for example, so doesn't have any meaning, right?
It's more like an exact copy versus the overall utility of it. And I'll get to patents. I have a lot more stuff on patents than I have on the other stuff. So patents are really the strongest form of IP protection. So just looking generally at strategies for intellectual property, it's kind of neat to see that the Constitution actually provided for intellectual property protection. Article 1, Section 8, this is the Commerce Clause. Clause 8, Congress has the power to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. So this specifically relates to copyrights and patents. So that's part of our country's founding principles is we want people to be innovative. So innovation, from the Latin word innovare, it's the introduction of something new. It fosters development of new ideas, gives employees a sense of job satisfaction, encourages teamwork, and allows organizations to find competitive advantages in the marketplace. It also has the disadvantage of encouraging competitors to innovate. So find ways to get around your protected intellectual property, improve on technologies that you've developed, or just generally work around what you're doing and possibly get a better result. So having a cool invention and an issued patent aren't the end themselves. The goal is not to create the invention, the goal is to make money. So this is Fatih Öztürk, who I believe was Broadcom. This is part of why you want to seek out patents as an entrepreneur and as a startup company is it shows to potential investors that you are really serious about your idea, about protecting what your ideas. It's not just some weekend project. It means that you have a certain level of investment and seriousness in what you're doing. So there's a reason for protecting your IP. Innovation. We hear sometimes the term disruptive innovation. It's when a smaller company, like a startup, an entrepreneur, comes up with a great idea that is a game changer. So there's some debate whether something like Uber is a disruptive technology, but it's something that turns the market around. It takes the established companies and just completely changes things. Amazon, e-commerce, it really is changing life and the way people do business. Importance of innovation. These are just some numbers on what it can do, what drives innovation, value of innovation. So these are just some of the benefits to society and our lives as a whole. So getting into patent, you can see that the big five tech companies, how many patents they file. So this is in a period of 7 years, 16,840 patents applied for by Microsoft. So Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook. Facebook is just little itty bitty, but it's big business. It's what these companies invest huge amounts of money into. And the fastest growing fields are artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, virtual reality, and augmented reality.
And to put those numbers into perspective, can you tell how many total patents in the US have been issued today?
To date?
25 million, 8 million?
Oh no, we're just about to hit 10 million.
Just about to hit 10 million.
Yeah, it'd probably be sometime this, I think I was just calculating the other day, it should be in July that we hit 10 million patents, and it's going to be very strange. When I started the first patents that I got were in the 4 million range. So that's nearly 6 million patents since I started practicing patent law. That's a long time. I mean, that's a lot of patents, a lot of innovation, and UCSD is what, 17th, I think.
17 in the US or world rankings?
World ranking, I believe.
I didn't even know.
Yeah,
You
it's.
know, the University of California system is the #1 university system in
Mhm.
the world with the most patents. So that's a good fact for you guys to know.
So what can you patent? This is anything under the sun that is made by man. So this is an old Far Side cartoon that I just love. So fire is invented. That's a naturally occurring thing. It can't actually be invented. So there are some criteria for patentability. One, that it has to be new and useful. So that means you can't patent abstract ideas, laws of nature, physical phenomenon. I can't patent water, but I can patent a process for purifying water. The invention has to be novel. It means it's not known to the public through prior use or publication. The rationale in the patent system is that they are going to grant a limited time monopoly for your invention in exchange for you disclosing it to the public. The idea being that for this period of time that you have this exclusive monopoly, which is 20 years from filing, you get to use it, you get to sue somebody if they infringe it, but after that time, it's dedicated to the public. It goes into the public domain, and anybody can use it. So that's why this novelty question, not known to the public. Once it's known to the public, you can't take it back. So that's when you go through the patent process, the patent office looks to see, was this known to the public? You can't have back what is already out there. So that's part of the examination process. And these numbers here relate to the US code sections. They're not special numbers for any other reason, but this is the code section under the US patent code. Non-obvious, it has to be something that wouldn't be readily apparent to a person of ordinary skill in the art. So if you know how to, if there's an existing chair with 4 legs and you make a chair with 5 legs, it's kind of obvious that you could do that. So even though you don't see too many 5-legged chairs, it's still going to be obvious because it's, it does exactly what you expect to do if you had a 5th leg on it. It still stands up. But if you had a 2-legged chair, that might be not obvious because 2-legged chairs don't stand up very well. I'm sure there are 2-legged chairs patented. Let's see. Oh, I just wanted to give you some examples of these anything under the sun. Some very silly patents. You've got chicken goggles is the first one. And when I first saw this, I thought, that's dumb. But apparently chickens in farmyards will peck each other's eyes out. So they actually came up with chicken goggles to protect their eyes so that they wouldn't attack each other. Here's an ear protector for dogs. Here's a ballistic body, a bullet-resistant bodysuit. Here's a beer-brella. I guess that keeps your beer cool if it's sitting in the sun. This is one of my favorites down on the bottom left. That's the pat on the back apparatus. So if nobody ever gives you, kudos, good job, attaboy, this is, you put it on your back and you pat yourself on the back. And the final one is a motorized ice cream cone. I guess that's so you don't have to, it just turns, and so, instead of turning it to lick the dripping ice cream, it turns itself. So these are all issued patents. So you really can, there are some amazing patents and covering really important technology, but, everybody has an idea. And so these are just a few of the odd ones.
So the point is, just because we can patent it doesn't mean that you should.
Well,
or doesn't mean that you're going to make money on it.
Right, and that's the thing is there's no such thing as you get a patent, they're going to come pounding on your door. It's got to be more than just something that meets the criteria of novelty and non-obvious and marginally useful, I guess. Yes.
There is a such thing like patent trolls, as far as I know. So I'm just wondering how they work in this realm. Do they, go around and explore what people are designing, or they come up with such an ideas and they
The patent trolls generally don't just patent for the sake of patenting. They go out and look for patents that exist, and they buy them, and then either enforce them. There are different strategies among these companies that purchase patents. Some of them are just defensively, like Intellectual Ventures purchases patents just to keep other people from owning them. And then they have members who pay large amounts of money, and so it's insurance. To keep this patent from being enforced against me, I'm going to pay for this policy, and you're going to buy these patents, and so I'm safe. So yeah, but patent trolls are a different thing. They're the ones who buy patents just for the sake of suing people.
And that's an important business, aspect. There is in the business world, and we are trying, you can explain it better. In the business world, the reason why patent trolls are not liked by anybody, the government or other business people, is that they acquire those patents or the rights to those patents, but they are not making the product that is covered under the patent. They are going and suing other people who are making those products to gain some financial benefit. So there are some business case rulings that limit what patent trolls can and cannot do. It's a very important thing to think about and to be aware of, because in some cases it has been in court, it has been alleged that the universities are patent trolls because we get patents to products that we never made. Herbitux, we had a patent for Herbitux, we had a patent for other products, but we never made those products in the university, right? So we went out and started suing a pharma company that made a product that is covered under one of our patents, claims and patents. Well, then they come back and say, well, you're not making any product, you're acting like a patent troll. So that's a very interesting, important sort of business discussion to have at a different time. There are many shapes and forms of patent trolls.
And patent troll is kind of a derogatory term. A lot of times they're called non-practicing entities or NPEs, but they're really trolls.
Question?
Yes?
So
I have to volunteer that I worked many years in thermal inkjet, and there were, for Hewlett Packard, and there were Canon, Epson, Lexmark, there were all these companies, and there were lots of games that were being played. Not only there, but I became aware of other patent friends that were patent examiners, and they would say that once something is allowed, and you can cite prior art, then you would build this constellation of patents, some of them vague, some of them very precise, that would then create landmines for somebody else to try to patent in that area. And my friend was pointing out to me that this is such a big game, as you pointed out with patent trolls, with corporations that trade it's like, Hewlett Packard would say, okay, we're going to license our technology to you, but we want all of your technology. A small company, they could bankrupt that company because the large corporation would get access to their key patents, in exchange for a little bit. This is extremely big stuff.
It is, and I have a number of clients that I have used that landmine or picket fence strategy as well, that you just try to build a barrier that nobody can cross. And that's not, certainly trolls take advantage of that, and you're talking about being in the inkjet industry, what immediately came to mind was Lemelson. And Lemelson was a very prolific inventor who actually caused the entire patent system to be changed because he filed patents back in the 50s that he kept going in the patent office. And back in at that time, patents lasted 17 years from issue. So if you kept a patent, lurking in the patent office for 30 years and all of a sudden it gets allowed right when the technology has matured, and so he's going after everybody, even though he had this kind of vague idea back in the 50s, it changed the patent system. They're called torpedo patents or submarine patents, and that resulted in a change of the patent system to 17 years from issue to 20 years from filing. So had he filed those applications 30 years ago, they would have expired before they ever issued. And so that was a modification of the patent system to take care of that type of approach to the torpedo patents. So these are a few basics about patents. There are 3 types of patents. Utility patents, those cover devices, systems, machines, processes, methods, chemical formulas, structures. It covers the way the article is used or works. The term is, as I said, 20 years from the earliest claim priority date, and patents can't be renewed. So once they expire, it's in the public domain. So chemical formulas, everything pretty much that comes out of the university is going to be covered by a utility patent. So it could be superconducting devices, electrical circuits, lasers, optical communications, oil exploration systems and methods. Yes?
Is there anything special with patents or research that has been made by, where the research was sponsored by the NIH?
There is, in that the patent system requires acknowledgement of government grants or funding that was used to develop inventions, and that just means that the government may choose at some point to use the invention themselves if they want to, or they can give rights to somebody else to use it. Generally, I don't think it happens, but it's just an opportunity to use it in exchange for the funding that they've provided. So if you look at a lot of the patents that come out of the university, you'll say it'll have an acknowledgement of government rights in the patent. So utility, it covers sprinklers, it covers microphones, just about everything is covered by a utility patent if it's patented. The design patents are another common vehicle for protecting things based on the way they look. So Ruben's glasses here could be covered by a design patent. Don't forget your glasses. You commonly see design patents on athletic shoes, and sometimes all that's changed is the stitch pattern or the stripe. I've seen a lot of patents, design patents on kitchen appliances, like small appliances. You see microwave ovens or blenders or food processors, all these things. They'll have design patents on it, and it'll just be a real minor change, like a stripe, furniture. So it's the way something looks as opposed to the way it functions. Term of a design patent is 14 years. It's a very valuable, like sunglass manufacturers are a big source of litigation for infringement of design patents. Icons, displays that you see on a computer, those actually can be covered by design patents. Plants are the ones that I know almost nothing about, except that you can get plant patents. UCSD doesn't do any plant patents, I don't think. They do a lot out of Davis and Riverside.
Correct, Davis and Riverside do a lot. I think we actually may have one or two, but I can't quite remember where. But yeah, we don't do the bulk. I mean, the bulk is Davis.
Yeah, Davis, and I believe they have generated quite a bit of revenue from licensing their plant patents.
If you were doing things like algae strains, would that fall into?
Yes, algae. In fact, I have right there. Plant patents include algae. So, maybe that's a new area if we are doing, yeah. So that's one area that you might start seeing. So, as I said, utility patents are the most common patents. Some of you may have heard of provisional application. That's a way to get your foot in the door for a utility patent application. It gets you the earliest possible filing date. The U.S. patent system is a first to file system. It didn't used to be. It's a relatively recent change in the law. I'd hoped to have retired by the time they changed to first to file, but they went sooner than I hoped. It used to be first to invent. So it is a race to the patent office. If you are working on your technology or invention that you're going to be building your company on, you want to think pretty seriously about getting your provisional application filed soon. They're generally relatively inexpensive. It's not a formal looking document necessarily. It just has to have all of the invention disclosed. It can be pictures, it can be your slide deck from your presentation, it can be your hand drawings, but it needs to describe the invention, and it establishes a priority date. A priority date is very important for determining, I mentioned before, what is prior art. Prior art, as I was saying, you can't take something back from the public if it's already out in the public. So if it's already existing, you can't claim it as your own. So there are these things called priority dates, prior art. Prior art is something that occurred before your priority date. So if you're going to be talking with people about your invention, making presentations, you want to get a provisional application filed because it establishes your priority date. So anybody who hears it and files an application after that is going to be after your priority date. So that's one thing that you should keep in mind if you're developing technology of some kind for your business, that provisional application is something that you want to have near the top of your list. Provisional application is not examined. It doesn't lead to any enforceable rights. You can say you have patent pending, which is a good thing. It has certain psychological benefits. It's not enforceable in any way. But as I mentioned, the quote from that the entrepreneur who said, I see when people have filed their provisional applications that they're serious. it gets the ball rolling, it shows that you're serious, and it starts the process towards obtaining the protection that you hopefully will get for your invention once you get into the regular patent process. Every country has its own patent system. There's no such thing as a worldwide patent. You have to file in every country that you want protection. Patents tend to be pretty expensive, especially foreign applications. And so it's really an important part of your business strategy, deciding where to file, where to seek patent protection. There are some countries that are, let's say, more accessible, more friendly, both in terms of the application process and the policing and enforcement process. Other countries, you can say, well, it takes them, Brazil, for example, it takes them 10 years to even examine a patent application. India can be even slower than that. So you think, okay, well, I want to get some protection because I've got a market in Brazil. It's a business decision whether you're going to invest the money to file and maintain a patent application in a country that you're not going to get protection for another 15 years, and then it expires 5 years later. So this is where a patent attorney can help you in making the decision, but it depends on your market. It depends on where you're going to be manufacturing, where you see your biggest competition. A patent, so let's look at a US patent. It gives you the right to make, use, sell, or import and offer for sale in the United States. So if somebody makes a product in China and brings it into the United States, you can sue them for patent infringement to prevent them from bringing it into the United States. If somebody manufactures it in the US, you certainly can go after them. Even if they manufacture it in the US for sale in China, the fact that they're manufacturing it here would be an infringement. So there are different strategies for determining what is the best protection. In most cases, I personally am not a great fan of foreign patents because of the expenses involved. Say you have an infringer in South Africa or China or India, you're going to have to find an attorney in that country to bring a lawsuit. Then you have to consider whether the courts in that country are going to be particularly friendly. There are stories about courts in, say, Japan being more biased towards non-Japanese parties. Same thing can happen in China. It's hard to find out if there's an infringement. So it's all part of the strategy, whether you want to spend the money on filing, whether you want to spend the money on policing to check to see if somebody is infringing in that country, and whether it's going to be practical to take action to stop an infringement once you discover it. So what I've put up here, some pictures, the patents in some other countries are much prettier than the US patents. So I just thought I'd show some of these. There's a Chinese patent, a Japanese patent, Canadian, and then this is a European patent. So some of the other differences in these foreign countries also will guide your strategy in whether you choose to file in these countries. A number of countries, Japan, Europe, don't permit patenting of business methods. Canada is also extremely difficult. Let's see, Japan, Europe, China prohibit patenting of medical treatments or diagnostics. You can do these in the US. You can file these. Conversely, because of recent changes in patent law, you can get patents on genes in Europe, but it's almost impossible to get them in the US. And so every system has a different set of laws definitions of what they consider to be patentable subject matter. So there's no standard that you can follow. Every country is a little bit different.
Which is an important distinction, right, in terms of how do you run your business. If you're some biological or genetics or what have you business, you can't patent in the US, you still have the other half, 40% of the world's market in Europe. You may consider doing that, of course, that is if you can manufacture, sell, and revenue in that product in Europe, right? So that gives you some flexibility, some options on what you're trying to do.
Okay, when I prepared some of these slides, my focus was really, or my thought was that a lot of people who are entrepreneurs are probably looking at software-based apps and that kind of thing. So this 101 is the code section that describes the patentable subject matter. And it says that you can't patent laws of nature, which is why you have so much trouble in the US getting patents on genes, but also math, algorithms are considered to be non-patentable subject matter. Well, so how is that going to work when you have the fastest growing field is artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality? This is all math, it's all algorithms. And so it's really a very hot issue in patent law right now. I mean, this is where innovation is, and yet we're having a hard time convincing the patent office that this innovation should be protected by patents. So is software patentable? Just a little legal history. 4 years ago, the US Supreme Court issued an opinion that just really messed up patents, the patent system, and made it very frustrating for patent attorneys and for a lot of innovators, especially in the tech area. And this case was Alice Corp v. CLS Bank, and it's known as Alice. So that obviously suggests Alice in Wonderland. Oh, you can't help that, we're all mad here. And so it just shows that this has had a profound effect on patenting and protection of intellectual property and innovation that really is a huge part of our economy. So it left the patent world in a state of confusion. The effect has been that potential patent applicants seeking, especially first-time inventors and startups, have been discouraged from seeking patent protection for their inventions. So going back to the idea of thinking, okay, well, I can't get a patent on it, well, maybe I can protect it with trade secret. Well, with trade secret, you can reverse engineer a lot of these things. So it's really created a dilemma, put people who are in the tech area, in the areas that rely on algorithms, have been kind of put in an intractable position of not knowing how to protect their ideas.
What was the thinking behind it?
The thinking behind, well, that's the problem. The problem is that the case Alice was a pure business method. It was a terrible case to test this question. And it was a how to determine whether insurance, it was a insurance method. It was a business method. And part of the change that has occurred with the internet is people have been doing some things for a long time, and just when the internet came into being and people could do them on the internet, people thought, oh, I can do the same thing I did by hand or in my head using the internet, and now I'm going to get a patent on it. So when all you're doing is taking something that you could do mentally or by hand and then saying, and there you do it on the internet, that's not really an invention. But the problem is that this was the test case. And this is what the Supreme Court said, is this, like, this is not innovation. Anybody could do this in their head.
So the idea is, if you can do these processes by hand, even if it takes you 100 years or 50 years to do all these correlations, or let's talk about a year versus a computer that can do the same in a nanosecond, that is not patentable because
Yeah, it's not a technological advancement.
that's wrong. Most of us disagree with, of course, the law.
Yeah.
Most trade groups disagree with that.
Yeah, the case itself, the facts in that case were terrible, and I would have said, that's not patentable. But this is the one that was used for the case, and they created such turmoil and such confusion that the patent office started saying, all you're doing is using a computer. Well, in a portfolio of cases I handled for UCSD, we were using computers to process heart signals to extract useful data that would then allow you to diagnose a disease. Well, that's useful. I mean, it's not just, put it into a computer and take it out. It's you are using a particular analysis, an algorithm to look at that ECG and derive data from it that allows you to more precisely diagnose the disease. So it was just lumped into, hey, that's an algorithm. It's not patentable. So this is and it's been evolving rapidly, but it has become a problem for many companies. So not just in the tech area, but in the medical area, and there were similar decisions on in the biotech area on genetics, biomarkers that said, well, if all you're doing is measuring a metabolite of a drug, that's a natural process, so that's not patentable either. So this has really created a lot of problems in the patent area that has the potential impact of stifling innovation because people don't want to spend a lot of money only to find out that they can't protect it. So there is currently effort to lobby for new legislation, and it's actively occurring right now that would give a better definition. I was just speaking with the patent examiner yesterday who said, we don't know. They keep telling us to do this, and now we're being told we have to do this. And so I was talking with a patent judge a couple days ago, and he said the same thing. It's constantly evolving, but there's still some degree of confusion to the point where patent examiners are just saying, algorithm, nope, not patentable. So we have had to become very clever and use particular language or say, well, it does this, and this is a technological advancement. And there are court cases that have been issued and are in process that will help clarify this. And I think it's going the right direction, but it's a pendulum that's swinging. And so here, the moral of this story I have is keep your head from Alice in Wonderland. Keep innovating and keep the patent applications coming because it's going to swing back. And they are technological advancements. These are improvements, and this is the whole concept that the Constitution intended to promote innovation and creativity. So there's just got to be a recognition and an understanding of what is innovation, what is an improvement, and algorithms are an improvement when they create a real result that is useful. So getting back to the IP strategy, does anybody have any questions on patents? I know it's a huge topic, and there's so much information I could give you. I just
want to say in that regards, after you're done, I want to share with you guys a 4-part seminar series that we're doing, just focus on patents actually starting tomorrow. Tomorrow is International Intellectual Property Day. And I'll share the information after you're done, because we're going to go for 2 hours, 8 hours total, talking about just patents and how our patents are structured, how claims are, made. So it's free, and you guys feel free to come or not. I'll give you the information, okay?
Okay, so going back to the strategy and the synergy of the IP protection, the trade secrets are great if you can keep them. If you can keep them secret. Patents are appropriate for when something is going to get out there in the that the public is going to have access to it. They're going to be able to reverse engineer it. You want to get your patents protecting it, because once it's out there, if it's not protected, anybody can use it. Copyrights protect designs, publications, programs, even your marketing materials, your website, presentations that you give, and then trademarks. Trademarks for some startups can be just absolutely the most important thing that you're doing, because that's what's going to get your app recognized, your name out there, so that people seek you out. You have to pay. This is generally going to be for larger companies. You're going to be paying attention to all of your research and development, public disclosures, marketing. A lot of times I'll hear with companies that their marketing people were so excited about this potential new product that they went out and told other customers, and they didn't let anybody know that they were doing that, and the patent applications hadn't been filed. So, sometimes people in a company get a little too excited about all these great innovations they're doing and forget that the protections are not in place, or protections need to be in place before they start making promises. In the patent system in the US, you have just a little tidbit of information about patents. You have 1 year from first public disclosure or offer for sale to file your patent application. So that's not true in other countries. In most other countries, it's an absolute novelty. So if there has been a publication and you haven't filed your patent application, you may be out of luck in those countries. So it's very important to manage your employees and curb your enthusiasm a little bit. Make sure that you have protected your technology before you tell everybody about it. For employees, again, what you want to do is you have questionnaires and forms for employees to fill out to help identify the intellectual property. The university has their invention disclosure forms. I think they're online, and the inventors just fill them out and submit them. Every company should have something like that if they've got employees. It's something that helps patent attorneys too. If you have a set of questions that say, this is what the improvement is, this is what the existing technology is, this is what I did, this is who I told about it. It's very important to maintain records so that you know exactly, so that everything's defined. And then this can be used to prepare the patent application. Consider overlapping methods of protection, so that's trade secret and patent. Maybe you don't want to disclose everything in your patent application. That's possible. If you don't want to say your computer, your actual code doesn't have to be disclosed in the patent application. You can just disclose flowcharts or operations, and then the code will be trade secret. The flowcharts and the general concept of the flow will be covered by the patent. So an effective IP strategy is just a clear and flexible plan that's consistent with the business goals. you want to increase your freedom without and minimize risk. So one of the things that we talked about, particularly with patents, a lot of people say, well, it's an invitation to a lawsuit. Patent and IP generally can be used as both a sword and a shield. So you can go out and you can attack your competitors by accusing them if they're copying your technology or in some way appropriating your intellectual property. You can use it as an offensive weapon, but you can also use it as a shield. Somebody was talking about the trading cards and the in an industry when you have a lot of people innovating, there's going to be overlap, and it really is kind of a race to see who can grab up everything. And so it can be used as a shield in terms of trading cards or saying, no, I invented this first because I have this patent, and I filed this patent application on this date. And so it's more than just a sword and a shield. It allows you to develop a strategy that is more flexible. So here we've got Wonder Woman, and her bracelets are a lot more flexible. I mean, the sword and the shield are kind of clumsy. But it's more maneuverable. You have to use it in a measured way that allows you to not just be offensive or defensive. It's a combination. So one thing when you're looking, it's not just protecting your own IP, you also got to make sure that you're not stepping on somebody else's. And you don't want these obstacles out there that's going to prevent you from doing what you want to do. And so what you have to look for is whether your competitors, look in the market that you are wanting to enter, see what they're doing, see what similar trademarks and brands are out there. So for the patents, you want to look at the technology. For trademarks, you want to look at brands and market, channels of trade. It's just like the sword and the shield. You want to be defensively prepared as well in case somebody comes at you with their sword. So for a proper strategy, you need a mix, and this is just how some of these ingredients come about. Trademark and copyright, those are something that you generate internally. Trade secret requires conscious designation. You have to be aware, you have to maintain your confidentiality. Patent, you have to apply for that, get the protection, and then it depends on how long it's going to protect you. A lot of times you'll see pharmaceutical companies will get a patent on the original compound for their drug, and then they prolong their coverage by enhancing or improving the product with delivery methods, with like release combination, blended drugs or controlled release. There are various things that they can do with the same drug. And so maybe somebody comes out with a generic of a particular drug, but because the original company has developed an extended release form of that drug, which is far superior still, then maybe the generic won't take off quite as well. So there are strategies that can be used to prolong protection, and even though patents do expire, you can do improvements, which if they themselves are sufficiently novel to qualify for patentability, then that's one approach that can be taken. So as far as third-party rights, once you find out if there are obstacles out there that somebody else has things, there are ways to deal with this. You can get, so we talked about innovation, you can also license. So you find out somebody has something that's blocking what you want to do. Maybe you have this really wonderful windshield wiper, and you got a patent on your windshield wiper, but somebody else has a patent on the car, and there's not much use for a windshield wiper without a car. So you're going to get a license for the car so you can put your windshield wiper on it. That's kind of a weird example, but it's, you identify and maybe partner with somebody who has the technology. Cross-licensing is possible. Maybe you've got the very best improvement on this particular product, and so they're going to say, yeah, we'd like to be able to use this technology, so we'll let you use ours. One example of licensing and getting your technology adopted is Tesla. I mean, they decided they were not going to charge people to use their technology because what they wanted to do was they wanted to develop the infrastructure. That certainly benefited them. So their IP strategy was to get patents, develop IP, get patents, and then get people to adopt it, to get the overall technology adopted, develop the entire infrastructure, and that allows them to sell more cars. So it's not just a exclusive right concept, it's advancing the technology if that is part of your business strategy. And then the third option we have here, which is not exactly a favorite of mine, litigation. This is one way, it's part of your strategy that you at least keep in the back of your mind. If you have to, you litigate. But it's not an ideal situation. Litigation is very expensive. It's expensive emotionally, consumes a lot of personnel time, expensive money-wise. And I've seen companies go under because they decided to litigate instead of, figuring out some other approach. But it's a way also of obtaining a license in settlement. You could do cross-licensing or some other compromise that's not a knockdown, drag out. Somebody's got to die in the end here. You can, like I was giving the example of Tesla, you can exploit your IP rights by including others, or you can just lock somebody out and say, no, nobody is going to use this. And so some of these, I mean, these are strategies. I think probably it's more useful to you all just to understand what the different types of IP are, and to know how to use them, take advantage of them, especially when you're starting up your new companies, that you do want to have a strategy to start off with. And you have to figure out the funding for it. You have to know what is going to, identify your market, identify you already have your technology, you have your idea. So how are you going to exploit it? How are you going to protect it? And then you want to make sure that you know what you need to do to play well with others, to take advantage of others, to use it as a valuable asset of your company so that you can head down the yellow brick road there. So you also, some of the things you also have to consider in your strategy, changing social norms and market preferences, like we were talking about, the disruptive technology. You don't want to really invest a lot in a brick and mortar type of business when e-commerce is the way to go. Uncertain legal landscape, that's for non-physicists, that's the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. The uncertainty of, for example, the way the patent offices and the courts are interpreting what is patentable. It's changing, but you have to force your way through, power through, and keep moving. And then the strategy on global and worldwide IP protection. So, simple conclusion, we're talking about intellectual property. Intellectual relating to the intellect, and smart property, possessions, assets. Be smart with your valuable assets. Thank you for your attention.
Something that I always tell the people who attend these seminars, courses, certificates that we're running, is the intent is for you to become aware and familiar with some of the concepts that you need to know when you're becoming an entrepreneur. The goal is not for you to become an expert, right, in any of these areas. How do I choose the different?
Here.
From the right, you have to change the input settings.
Oh,
Right now it's going to.
Preset 1. Nope. Sorry about that. Where's the computer?
here, you have a,
Give me 1 second, guys, because I just want to share with you. Oh, here.
Oh,
we go.
that.
Perfect.
You just have to change the input setting.
Projector, left display.
source, source.
There you go.
There
Okay.
we go.
Just a minute. So, to keep that in mind, it's not these seminars are not meant for you to become experts. It will take you 10 years to become an expert in any of these things. It's for you to become aware of what you're doing. So, tomorrow we kick off with a new seminar series that is run by another one of our partner firms, Pillsbury Law. It's another free event. And you can go ahead and register for free on Eventbrite. What I wanted to show you is kind of what are the topics that are going to be covered. Well, let me read them to you. Tomorrow we start with basic concepts in intellectual property protection, kind of similar to what Eleanor just walked us through. On May 24, we start talking about patent protection for biotech and chemical innovations. So it's very focused on patents and biotech and chemical. On June 21st, we talk about the business role of patents in your commercial success. And then on July 19, we look at the enforcement and infringement of patents. So if you go to our website, which is innovation.ucsd.edu, okay, very simple, innovation.ucsd.edu, then you go to events, click on events, and in the calendar here, just click on the 26th, which is tomorrow. Oh, never mind, it's not working. Okay, I'll email it to you, but if you go to Eventbrite, you can find intellectual property for researchers and scientists, and it's a 4-part series, 2 hours from 5 to 7, starting tomorrow. Okay, I just want to make sure that you guys knew that. Anything else they want to say?
One thing is, next week, we may be switching the order of classes due to a person that would normally be teaching next week's class had to do it the following week. So next week, we're going to most likely be focusing on financing of the startups, so all the kind of venture capital, pitching, all that kind of stuff. That's a real fun one. Try to be here, look before 6 because it's literally a full 2 hours because there's a lot of stuff to go for, and we find that particular session has a lot of questions very similar to what we got today. If you have any questions, of course, email us. Want to connect to, did they give them your contact information?
I have business cards.
Great. You can come up afterwards.
Yep.
Is the class tomorrow right here?
No, it's at the building right next door is the medical telecommunication building. What's it called?
The telemedicine building?
Telemedicine building, which is
Kind of next to, if you're
Kinda
not familiar,
over
it's kind of the
there.
bottom one, that's kind of all glass.
right next door to it. Yeah. If you have any ideas or patents, talk to us, and we'll let you know if your ideas are worth filing and having a patent or not. Okay? I want to thank Eleanor one more time. She did a fantastic job.